This episode may contain language or discussions that may be offensive or triggering. Refer to the episode summary for details. Welcome to She.confidential. My name is Charlene Ketchum, and today I am chatting with my buddy who I've not gotten to see in real life outside of social media in probably over 10 years, Mr. Larry Penton. He is 14 years of experience as a firefighter, paramedic, and he's retired as a firefighter, but he still is an active licensed paramedic and just got a wealth of knowledge and is here today to chat with me to kind of arm you all with some tips to help you navigate these holidays and know how to prepare for some of the most common medical emergencies and health issues that people encounter during the holiday season. We're also going to talk a little bit about what you need to have in your at-home first aid kit. We're going to talk about how you can determine when to call the doctor immediately, or when you need to immediately just go to urgent care or the emergency department, or when you need to call an ambulance. We'll also dispel some of the myths around COVID and just giving you the standard disclaimer. This does not constitute medical advice. We're giving you some tips and outlines just to kind of give you some considerations to think about. But definitely, if you have a medical emergency, particularly if something's going on with your heart, or if you can't breathe, or you can't control the bleeding, call 911. So we're giving you some tips, things to consider, but definitely if you feel like you need to seek medical attention immediately, please do so. So thank you, Larry, for being here and chatting with me today.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure's all mine.
Yeah, we got a lot to dig into. So 14
This
years.
might have to be a two-parter. I mean, we can always split it up. Because
we could do that, or people they can just listen to this while you're wrapping presents because Christmas is next week. And
yes.
So people could listen to this while they're, wrapping presents or making their Christmas list if you're a procrastinator and you haven't gotten started yet. So people can just have this going in the background. So in your 14 years of experience, we were talking before we started recording about how you worked at the firehouse in St. Louis, Missouri in a really active zone.
Yes.
And you saw a little bit of everything. And what are some of the big things that were common, you got common calls for that you commonly saw in the emergency department around the holiday season?
As far as the emergencies that we got, in my experience, is more on the paramedic side than the fire side. I got hired by the fire department in 2019, and I retired in 2020, May of 2020, and we'll get into that. But primarily, my experience has been more on the paramedic side than the fire side because they want you to be dual licensed and trained and stuff. Uh, as far as ER calls in the wintertime, the majority of the calls are falls, be it because of the weather conditions, especially I'm in Charlotte now. So working and living in St. Louis, you get all four seasons, well. And so in the wintertime, you got a lot of snow, more icy conditions. So you have a lot of falls that typically are the number one reasons that people go into the ER, or we call it the ED, emergency department. So if I say ED from this point on, I hope people know what I'm talking about. You have the falls also come from not just the weather conditions, but we're talking about holidays. So people are putting up decorations, external, internal. So let's talk about internal real quick. They're hanging lights. They're putting up ornaments on the trees and different things. They're putting wreaths and mistletoe and just all kind of decorations, holly and different things like that. So they're using step ladders. They're using chairs. They're using tables. They're using some things that are just really not sturdy or really ideal to put up decorations and different things. Those generate falls, especially if you have like a carpeted surface or uneven floor or something like that. Externally, people putting lights up and different decorations, and they're getting on the roofs and different things. So those also generate falls because the ladders are not secured properly. They're leaning up in the wrong way. If they are not making sure that the rung they're walking down each rung
Because they might be
instead of going one at a
tipsy.
time. Yeah, instead of going up one at a time, they'll skip rungs and they'll slip,
Yeah.
and alcohol is a big thing. That's another big issue
Mhm.
that we deal with in the ED, and as far as the 911 calls that I used to get, um, alcohol issues. I tell you this: if you go into the ED for an alcohol related issue, you're going to be there for a gang of hours because there's really nothing that the ED can do as far as
Mhm.
alcohol intoxication. It's kind of like when somebody gets arrested on a DUI and they'll put them in jail. I mean, they're in jail for that offense, but they used to call it the drunk tank. They're
Yeah.
just sitting in there until they sober up because the same thing is going to happen in the ER. They may give you an IV, a bag of fluid, because that they can help you, but and monitor your vitals. But you're going to be sitting in a corner somewhere. You might get a room in the ER or the ED, but pretty much, especially nowadays with all the stuff that's going on with COVID, that's another thing that people are seeing in the ED for. Uh, Food poisoning
I mean, a
is
question
a
about being intoxicated.
okay.
So, a lot of people drink a lot, and I've seen it at holidays, but not just holidays, just being out in general, hanging out with people. So, a lot of folks think I'll drink a lot of water or I'll drink some coffee and that'll sober me up. So, in your experience, is that effective?
Coffee can help. A lot of times with intoxication, you want to focus on basically, like I said, it has to work its way out of your system. You can drink a
Exactly.
lot of water. Coffee is just going to give you some caffeine. It's not necessarily going to help with the intoxication. There's just going to be some time. Um, when people drink, what they fail to do is they fail to hydrate. I tell people all the time, and again, this is just me. This is just Larry Penton. This is my disclaimer. Larry Penton's advice, if you're going to drink, no matter when, is for every one drink, you take 2 drinks of water. Every one drink, you take 2 drinks of water. So if you got a can of beer, drink
Mhm.
2 glasses of water. Also eat, preferably something that has some oily, or some fried chicken wings or something, some French fries, whatever, something a little greasy. Preferably before you drink. My dad had this recipe. He would take 2 Excedrin. He would eat something really greasy, like go to Kentucky Fried Chicken or KFC as they call it now. Then he would drink, and then after he got through drinking, he would take another 2 Excedrin, and that was his hangover remedy to prevent it.
Wow.
Yeah. But as far as alcohol, like I said, the key is staying hydrated
Hmm.
because the alcohol absorbs in your small intestines and it feeds into all of your cells, and so all those cells are drunk. So you got a trillions and trillions of cells that have
Hmm.
to detox basically. That's why it takes hours, and
Yes.
especially if you know, there's a case on court TV right now. A lady, she drank 5 or 6 beers and she took a shot. And she got in the car and drove, hit and killed an officer. And so she's on trial for that right now. And oh my God, it's just a horrific scene because they got it on camera and stuff and they got pictures
The
of it.
accident?
Yeah. Yeah, it's on
Oh,
court
wow.
TV right now. Yeah, it was bad. It's horrible. And this happened like at 11 something at night.
Mm.
Street was well lit. There was a one of those not the cones, but the tripod with the lights on it, the little
Okay.
street barricade.
Hmm.
right in the middle of the street because there was a sewer issue right there, and it rained that
Mm-hmm.
night. And oh my gosh, she was in the wrong and driving on the other side of the street. She pretty much just barreled into this cop, and he went through the windshield partially. It was horrible. So that's kind of my spiel on drinking. Don't drink and drive, please. Don't
Yeah.
call Uber or just sit there in your car and go to sleep.
Yeah. Don't try to drink coffee. And, and
No,
I
that's
will
not gonna
acknowledge
help.
when I was younger, there were times when I'm like, oh, I'm a little tipsy, but, I can drive. I feel like I'm good to drive. And I stopped doing that around the time that I started working in the emergency department because I used to work
Yes.
at Children's Hospital.
Okay.
And it was around the time that I was there because when you see people who have been involved in motor vehicle accidents or you see the impact, it's like, I don't want to ever do that to somebody. So don't drive tipsy. And the whole coffee thing, it's a myth. That
It's
doesn't
a
it
myth.
doesn't work. But I like your tip because see, I was taught to drink, just have one glass of water in between each drink. But if you're having two, that's even better because that's going to pace you as well. Like
Right.
it's gonna really, because if you're getting that water in between your drinks, that's gonna slow you down with how much alcohol you're consuming. And that's also going to help you stay hydrated, which
Absolutely.
will reduce your hangover and all that stuff and kind of help balance things out. So I like that tip to have two glasses of water in between each drink.
I don't know about you. I don't like being hungover. I don't like that
No.
hugging the toilet bowl and having the vertigo symptoms and stuff like that. So yeah,
Well, I don't want to be
and
drunk because even before that, like I can count on my hand how many times I've been hungover. But what I've noticed though, the older I get, like the more dehydrating alcohol seems to be.
yes, it
I
does.
can't
Yeah.
drink. I'm a big wine person. I've never really been like, ooh, let me do a bunch of shots and all that kind of stuff because that just made me feel sick. So I didn't want to do that. So I've always been more of a wine girl. But now, as I've gotten older, it's like it affects my
Okay.
sleep, and that is that sort of thing that's going to have me a little bit more dehydrated the next day. So the game has changed for me when it comes to drinking, but I don't even want to be drunk because I'll tell you,
Yeah.
one year on New Year's Eve, I was leaving a show because I had an ex boyfriend who was in a band.
Okay.
So he was playing a show in the Loop, which is an area in St. Louis that has different little venues and stuff. And so it was a New Year's Eve show. And we were leaving his show and going down to another venue that was still open. And we
Mhm.
just wanted to kind of hang out and kick it. And I had on some shoes that were not appropriate to wear if you were very
Some
tipsy.
heels.
And so, yes. And I didn't
You wore your
realize I was being
stilettos.
tipsy. It was just, they were so cute though. They were so cute. And I still have those shoes. I haven't worn them in like 5 years. I need to give them away. But I was headed down there and I didn't realize I was that tipsy because I had been drinking like all day because I used to
Okay.
have like a brunch with family on my birthday. Cause again, my birthday is New Year's Eve. So I had
Yeah.
mimosas and we do more liquor versus orange juice and mimosas. So I'd had those and then I had gone someplace else and had wine. I had been drinking all day. Then when I got to that venue, I people gave me drinks because again, it's my birthday. So I had a
Mhm.
lot of liquor and I don't think I had eaten since breakfast that morning. So I'd had all this alcohol. Plus I had been mixing things because people were offering me different things. So we were
Sure.
walking down the street and all of a sudden, I just went boom. And I'm notorious for falling. Like I used to fall all the time, and knock on wood that I don't fall like again. But I used to fall all the time, and I went like boom. Thank God, like nobody was around with cell phones and everything the way people do now. Because this was over 10 years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, within the last, I think it was would have probably been like 2009 or no, it was 2010, I think 10 or 11, one of those. And no, it would have been 11 because, yeah, it would have been 11. So this is in 2011. And so there weren't a bunch of people with cell phones around, I don't think, because I've never seen this footage online. But I went boom. And when I fell, like my knee was bleeding, but it didn't even hurt. And I was like, let's go, let's go. I want to dance. And my boyfriend was like, no, you're going home. So they took me home and I was really disappointed and sad and stuff. And the next day I was so sick.
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't
And
fun. And I was
no,
like, I'm never gonna let that happen again because I didn't get to have fun that night. I'm sure that was a little bit embarrassing to have your girlfriend drink so much that she like falls and you have to take her home.
yeah,
And then I get to feel sick the next day. So yeah, it's not even worth it for me.
not at all. I'm going to give you a list of things real quick, and then we can talk about anything particular on in any one of those items
Okay.
in terms of what are your some more common holiday injuries that generate ER visits. So you got we talked about slips and falls, sharp object injuries. So again, people will be doing a lot of things. They're putting up decorations. They're cooking. Uh, they're putting presents together. So you're using
Oh yeah.
knives and hammers and screwdrivers and scissors and just all kind. Even the hooks for the ornaments and
Yes.
just different things like that. Uh, just be mindful of those objects because they can puncture, they can cut, they can lacerate. That those tend to be issues that you get called about also. And again, people get drunk. They use these objects to cut and puncture and different things. Uh, Workplace accidents. You have people that are seasonal employees that are getting hired.
Mm.
So they, and it's a mad rush when they have Black Friday.
Yes.
You've seen the videos online of people, doing the human stampede.
Mm-hmm.
People, especially nowadays, everybody, well, not everybody, but there are some people that are acting like they've lost their mind and they want to attack these essential workers in these
Yeah.
stores over a Black Friday item. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
there's a PS5 that's available for $200. They only got a certain number of them, so you know that's going to generate some stampede and some
Mm-hmm.
rugby matches in the store. Um, so workplace accidents happen more, even at a company or what have you. People they drink at these work. Some of these
The
events that
holiday
you have at work,
parties.
these holiday parties.
Mm-hmm.
They allow you to drink, or they might have it at another location off site, and people fall different things. Abdominal pain and diarrhea. So you got it coming out of one end or out the other. Either you're puking or you're pooping.
Yeah.
A lot of that can be because of food poisoning, alcohol intoxication, um, psychiatric disorders. It's the holidays. People are happy or they're sad, or they might be both. On the happy end, they might be too happy, and in terms of using narcotics or using drugs or
Yeah.
using some other substance or combination. Because I always say that mankind has and always will look for the ultimate high in whatever way they can
Greedy.
find it, you know. And so you have from one end to the other. On the high
Mm-hmm.
end, it's almost like a bipolar thing or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
people want to get high, they want to be happy, they want to celebrate, they want to forget some of their troubles and stuff or whatever. And on the low
Mm-hmm.
end, you have depression. Hey, my loved one is not here this holiday season. I just lost this relative. I just lost my job. I gotta isolate, so I can't be around. I can't go and visit everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Especially last year was really horrible when COVID hit.
Yeah.
For that, people have cabin fever. That's why you
Yeah.
see a lot of people just going out and kind of not really being as safe and social distancing because of the cabin fever. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But psychiatric disorders, and then just the normal psychiatric issues that you see in the ED sometimes are exacerbated because of the holiday schedule. People tend sometimes not to go and get their prescriptions as they normally do. They may not take them like they're supposed to
Yeah.
because of the holiday. I'm so busy putting this tree together, I didn't take my medicines. Now
Yeah.
we get a call and we're like, okay, what's going on? And having to deal with that situation. So, in poisonings, again, you have food poisonings, you have people that didn't take their medication and now they're trying to double up. No, don't,
Yeah.
and just other things in terms of poison. Your fur babies, those tend to not get human ED visits, but you get vet visits
Yeah.
because those, especially those ornaments or some of the garland around the
And the
trees
poinsettia.
and
Yes.
the poinsettias and
Mm-hmm.
some of these live trees,
Mm-hmm.
some of your pets will chew on that stuff,
Yeah.
and it can be toxic to them. So you have to really be mindful of the stuff that you sit out. Another thing with, especially with food poisoning, keep hot foods hot, cold foods cold, because we know people will make a spread just like
And leave it out
Thanksgiving
all day.
and leave it out all
We don't be
day
putting
long.
anything up.
Don't
The
put
stuff will be
anything
out
up.
all day.
That dressing and those greens have been sitting there for 15 hours, not
Yep.
hot or none of this stuff. Oh, I just throw it in the microwave.
Yep.
That turkey and ham, especially that turkey's been sitting out for 12 hours, not heated or none of this stuff. You can put it in the
Yeah.
microwave and nuke it all day long. That's not going to stop the salmonella that's already built up in that bird.
I'm so glad you
So
said that because a lot of people think that microwaving it will kill the salmonella if it started growing any bacteria from sitting out. So
microwaves are not IV lights. You know?
hey, I'm just telling
I'm
you what
just saying.
I've heard. People like
No,
you
I'm
microwave it,
telling
it'll
you what
kill
I
all of
know. Yeah, there. I'm going to write a book one day. Candace and I are going to write. Well, we've been talking about it, but she's in the fire academy now. I love her
it.
because she's working at the fire department that I retired from. So
Oh,
Candace and
really? I
I,
didn't
yeah,
know that.
oh yeah,
Neat.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So she's, I think this will be week 3 for her. It's a 14-week fire academy.
Okay.
So and she's doing pretty good. So we're gonna write a book one day just about our ER and EMS experience and about just the calls that we've gotten because that, whoo,
It'll
it could be
rival.
like
So
War
I
and
started
Peace.
watching 911. Have you seen that show 911 with
Yes,
Angela Bassett?
yes.
How realistic is it?
I stopped looking at it the first season. Most of these shows are. I'm a fan of Chicago Fire and
Mhm.
Chicago PD. I look at Chicago Med somewhat,
Mhm.
but I'm more so. I look at Chicago Fire more so than because they deal with a lot of that stuff together. And
Mm.
Night Watch and Boston EMS, those shows
Mm.
because Night Watch is on A&E and it's based in Louisiana,
Oh, okay.
and they deal with all three: fire, PD, and EMS.
Mm.
Night Watch is a great, great, great show
Okay.
because it's reality TV for real. Like it's the real thing. Like they deal with real call. Those
Oh,
the TV
okay.
show, yeah, the TV shows like the 911 and stuff. They're just drama based. So they deal with a lot of those issues that we see, but it's drama.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff is like, no, you wouldn't do that. No, why are you doing that? No, that's totally wrong or whatever. But it's entertainment. So they get it right for the most part. It's just
Yeah.
some things. It's like, oh, so one of EMS's pet peeves is when you see somebody that's flatlined and they get the paddles out and they start to defibrillate. You don't defibrillate that because that rhythm is technically it's called asystole, meaning A is without
Mm-hmm.
uh, Sicily is the pumping action, the initial pumping action. So without the initial pump, so you don't have any pumping action. The defibrillator's job is to give the heart an electric shock or jolt because the heart is either in a funky rhythm instead of its normal boop 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 boop
Mm-hmm.
boop boop rhythm. It'll be boop 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 boop. It's all over the place or whatever. So there's no organized rhythm, or there's an organized rhythm, and it's too wide or it's too narrow, and different things like that. So when you defibrillate, you're trying to get that. I describe it like this in layman's terms. You know how you have your kid, you go to the grocery store or you go to the a Walmart or Target, and you go in to get your stuff, and you tell the kid, "Hey, you're not getting anything today. I'm just shopping for whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And you get into the checkout aisle, and then they see all the candy there, and they're like, "Oh my God, I want this and I want that," and you kind of
Yeah.
give them a little elbow or something. Back in the days, we might got popped a little bit,
Yep.
and you're like, "Stop that." That's what the defibrillator does, and the kid starts acting normal again. So the defibrillation gives your heart a jolt to say, "Hey, stop acting up and get back into your normal rhythm."
Okay.
So when we see defibrillations on asystole, because asystole would basically be like if I took my LED light and unplugged it, and I start hitting the on and off switch to it, it's not coming back on because I don't have no power to it.
Yeah.
And I disconnected the wire. It doesn't matter.
That's like a battery that's totally dead.
A battery that's totally dead. It's like I'm still pushing the button. The battery's in there, but it's dead. So you're not doing anything to it or whatever. So you'll get the initial jolt of the body. It'll still, because it's getting
response to the electrical current.
Yeah, but other than that, nothing's going to happen. So that's why when we see people doing that on TV, I'm like throwing stuff at the TV and like,
all the time.
Yeah, all the time or whatever. But that's another story. So those are kind of the top things that we see in the ERs. And then just people overeat. People overeat a lot during the holidays because this is the best time of the year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, especially Thanksgiving, boy. I got mom's cooking and my grandma's cooking, and I'm going from this house to that house to this house to that house because they don't make the banana pudding over here, but I can go over Granny's house and get it, and they don't make this, they don't make deviled eggs here, but I can get it over cousin Bob's house, and just so you're house hopping. It's almost like bar hopping or whatever for the holidays. So people overeat. And again, if you don't have people keeping their food hot, that's supposed to be hot, or cold that's cold, that can happen.
Yeah. And overeating can mimic things like a heart attack,
you can get heartburn and different things like that. Yeah, absolutely. So, or the big thing that I worry about is aspiration. The food going down the wrong pipe, as we call it. So you got your airway and you got your esophagus. And sometimes because you got this big mountain of food on one plate,
right?
Like you can't just go. It's like when people go to a buffet and they get a mountain of food, and I'm sitting there. I got like 4 items. It's almost like I went to a fancy restaurant or whatever. That's how my portions are. Because I'm like, you can keep going back up there a million times. You don't have to get one plate. Like that's all you're going to get.
Right.
Or whatever. But people will do that. They got a mountain of food, and when you see that mountain, it's like gobble, 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 gobble. People start choking. So now, what are you going to do when somebody's choking? Have you been trained on how to do the Heimlich? What if you're by yourself and you're choking? How do you do the Heimlich on yourself? There's a way to do that. So, part of what I do is I tell people, hey, here's what you can do in that situation or whatever. If you don't know how to do these skills, CPR, first aid, including Heimlich maneuvers, using an AED, because most people don't have an AED in their home, but everybody should know how to do CPR.
And what is the AED for people who are familiar?
The AED is the automated external defibrillator. So those are I call them the portable monitors, as we call them, or defibrillator monitors, because they monitor electrically without the screen to show you what the heart rhythm is like when I show up with my big monitor, it'll show you what the rhythm is. I can put the paddles on. I can do all kinds of things with my monitor. This one is just a smaller version and it tells you everything to do. It tells you what to do first,
Mm-hmm.
from first to last. It'll tell you when to give a shock and when not to, and when to start doing CPR. So
Perfect. Yeah.
definitely everybody should take CPR. There's tons of places that you can go. Most I know when I worked at Abbott EMS in St. Louis, they started doing mass uh, big group CPR trainings.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Seattle is the city you want to be in if you would ever have a heart attack, because I think
Really?
1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10 uh, of every resident in Seattle is certified for CPR, including kids.
Wow.
They would have mass CPR trainings. They would have like 10, 20,000 people trained at one time, like in a stadium or something.
That is awesome. I never thought about that. But when you think about it, wow. And that I would think that would be not too hard to do. Like I've gotten the trainings through work.
Yeah,
But yeah, I would think so. It's not like the trainer has to sit there with each individual person. So yeah, that would be easy to do that with big groups like that.
absolutely. And most of these CPR trainings are through like the Red Cross, American Heart Association.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do it privately.
Mm-hmm.
You can just Google CPR certifications, and you'll in your area, and you'll get a litany of and a bevy of information, I should say. But definitely, especially with these holidays, not just the holidays, but we're in we're living in the days and times of ASHE, active shooter hostage events.
Mm-hmm.
So ASH
Yeah.
for short. Last week, the shooting that happened in outside of Memphis, Tennessee, the
Mm-hmm.
Asian he was like a third party vendor at that Kroger store,
Yeah.
working in the sushi department. He had gotten fired that day. He left and came back and shot uh, 13
Mm-hmm.
people, 14 people, including himself. He killed himself. 2 people died. So, um, what do you do in those situations?
Yeah.
If I would say Publix. Publix is kind of like uh, it's a grocery store here in the South. So,
Yes. Yeah. I'm familiar with
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So I was at Publix here, and
Mm-hmm.
I got the news alert that there was an active shooter situation in the Tennessee area at Kroger, and I'm like, oh my god, what if that happened here?
Yeah.
You know, so uh, the podcast that I did last week, which we'll talk about later, we talked about that. But definitely, those are things that you just want to keep in mind, as far as being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And those are also some things that we talk about to people, because everybody's not going to an EMT or paramedic class. Everybody's not
Mm-mm.
a doctor or a nurse or what have you. And a lot of times people are like, I don't want to touch no dead folks. I don't want to touch no blood. I don't want to see
Yeah.
vomit. I don't want to see bodily fluids, none of that stuff. You know, sometimes people will video an emergency incident and not even call 911.
So frustrating.
That's something that just boils my blood. And
So
please,
frustrating.
everybody has a cell phone. Call 911, stay on the phone with them, give them all the information until that dispatcher tells you, okay, hang up.
Right.
And, you know, be respectful of somebody's tragedy. You're videotaping somebody that just got run over by a car, or they just fell off of a roof, or they just got burned. That's another thing I wanted to mention: burns. Those are big holiday emergencies, because again, cooking
Yeah.
and fire pits and just all kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Fireplace injuries and different things like that. Carbon monoxide is a huge one also,
Yeah.
uh, because people are maybe having issues with their finances and they can't afford to pay their heating bill. And so they'll
Yeah.
use the stove as
Mm-hmm.
their heating element. They'll burn things in the house that
Yeah.
without a chimney, without a fireplace.
Yeah.
And so those are huge, huge issues, especially the carbon monoxide poison, because that's colorless and odorless. And if you don't have a carbon monoxide detector, uh, that's a problem in your home also.
Yeah. And having those functional smoke detectors.
Speaking of which, this is me. This is my disclaimer also as a medical pro and as someone who worked for a fire department. Every fire department in your local municipality will give you for free a smoke detector, at least one. There are many times that your local fire department and fire protection district will come and do a door to door for all the residents in that district or that fire protection district. And they will say, hey, do you need a smoke detector? Do you need batteries? Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need help putting them up? We'll put them up for you. All for free, no money. You can go to your local firehouse or your local fire protection district because some fire departments have more than one firehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but you can go to your local firehouse and say, hey, and you don't. They typically give them out for the residents of that
Yeah.
district. So just go to your local fire protection district and say, hey, I need a smoke detector. Some will even give you a carbon monoxide detector. They're probably starting to get more into that, but definitely a smoke detector or a couple of them or what have you. Because we would rather give you that than get
Yeah.
a call at 2 in the morning saying, because when the fire call comes out, those tones go out and everybody leaves the house. The ambulance leaves the house. The fire crews leave the house. The battalion chief leaves the house. It's basically everybody and their mama is woken up and going to that call.
Yeah.
So we don't play when it comes to that. Uh, we will all show up and it might just be a faulty smoke detector because the batteries haven't been changed. Hi, folks. I want you to hear me clearly. Change your batteries twice a year. When the daylight savings time comes up, change your batteries twice a year. That constant chirping that you hear is not going anywhere. That is your cue to change out that battery because that can keep you alive.
Yeah.
We had an incident at our place a couple of weeks ago. 2 in the morning, smoke detector started going off. Like it was going off like a high school bell at 3 o'clock.
Oh
We
wow.
have sprinklers in our place also throughout our residence. So I'm like, thank God the sprinkler's not going out and the carbon monoxide detector wasn't going off. I'm like, and we live in an apartment building, so we call maintenance because they're open 24 hours for stuff like this. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, as long as the smoke detector's not going out, and I went around and I got my fire extinguisher and I'm in firefighter mode and all this stuff, so we were all good. Checked outside the building, and it was a faulty smoke detector because they're wired in or
Okay.
whatever. So they had to replace that whole unit, but they're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
All the smoke detectors are connected because it's a daisy chain tiered system. Uh, so again, when those batteries are dead and dying, I mean, when they're dead, you're just not going to get anything or whatever. But they still have enough energy in them that they'll do that chirp every 15 seconds or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
That's your clue to change out the batteries twice a year. That's all. You don't have to change them out quarterly, semi-annually, twice a year.
Yes. Set a reminder on your
Set a reminder.
smartphone.
You know when daylight saving time is? It's the same
Make
day
it
that
habit.
daylight saving time is. Set the clock back an hour, change the batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Set the clock up an hour, change the batteries.
Yeah. Thank you for that PSA.
That's my PSA.
I have three questions before I forget them. the first kids. So kids can go to CPR training as
Absolutely.
well. Okay. And then for the active shooter events, I've heard a lot about the Stop the Bleed initiative. And so that is something that's separate to CPR and everything that people could look into participating in. And that's a nationwide thing, right?
Yes. Some
Yes.
some stop the bleed or STB trainings are being incorporated with CPR training
Okay.
because they go hand in hand. And one
Yeah.
of the things, and like I said, we'll talk about it a little later. I did a podcast talking about that, and my partners and I were talking about those things collectively. Uh, the major things that you deal with active shooter event is a major bleed because somebody got shot
Hmm.
primarily, or people got shot. You got somebody that's laid out because they got shot and they're unresponsive. What do you do first? Do you start the bleed first, or do you do CPR first?
Hmm.
You know, because if you don't know what to do first and you do the CPR first, that person's going to die
Yeah.
because they're going to bleed out. Because you got to
Right.
remember what CPR is. You're resuscitating the heart so it can circulate the
Okay. The
blood.
blood.
Well, if you're bleeding out with this major bleed,
Hmm.
you can bleed out in 90 seconds, depending on how big the major bleed is. And the human body carries about four to 5,000 liters of blood, which is about 2 liter soda bottles worth of blood in your body. You can bleed out, especially if you got multiple gunshots that have hit multiple arteries.
Yeah.
You can bleed out in as low as 90 seconds. So you got to stop the major bleed first, then do the CPR. But like I said, we'll get into that a little later.
And when people call 911, one of the benefits of calling 911, in addition to getting assistance for that person, is that the 911 operators can help you help that person, can't they?
Absolutely. Yes. The most 911 operators, or they call them EMDs, emergency medical dispatchers, most of them are trained EMTs.
I didn't
Some
know
of them are
that.
even
Mhm.
paramedics, which is all paramedics are EMTs, but not all EMTs are paramedics.
Okay.
So when people call me an EMT, my wife kind of loses it. No, he's a paramedic. I'm like, I'm an EMT still. I just took an advanced training and became a paramedic. But that's part of my title, EMT paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
But most dispatchers are EMT level, and sometimes, and depending on where you work, that might be a requirement of the job, either coming in or within a year or so.
Okay.
But yeah, they have flip charts that, what did 911, what's your emergency? Oh, my kid just swallowed something and they're choking or whatever. They'll flip up the chart to the choking pediatric flip chart, and they'll say, okay, what happened? What are you doing? What's going on? They'll go down the little algorithm. So yeah, they are very helpful. And like I say, stay on the phone with the emergency medical dispatcher until they tell you to hang up.
Yeah. Okay. So that should be reassuring for people,
Yeah,
that you don't, even if you haven't had the trainings and everything, if you call 911, instead of, make use of that phone that you've got, instead of
everybody
just,
has a cell phone. Some people have two.
yeah, like
You can call on
call.
your iPad. You can call, on all these smart devices.
Hmm.
So yeah, use them.
Yeah, call for help.
Call for help.
And so you've alluded to this interview twice. So I think the audience might be like, okay, we want to hear about this interview that you did, because it touched on so many of the things that we're going to talk about today, including like emergency kit supplies that you should have at home. So tell us about this amazing interview you did in your upcoming series.
I had a fan out moment last week because I did a live stream video with myself, uh, an army veteran who was a combat medic, and he does STB training, stop the bleed training, along with the one and only hip hop rock and roll Hall of Famer of the rap group Public Enemy, the one and only Professor Griff. And he has a number of social media platforms that he
Mhm.
does different things on. And so on his YouTube channel and on his Instagram page, he does what's called a Melanin Mondays, where he focuses on certain issues in the Black community specifically that is geared towards helping people help themselves. And a lot of it is just knowledge based stuff or whatever. So last Monday's Melanin Monday, the topic was what's in your IFAC, which stands for Individual First Aid Kit. He got to talking about because Professor Griff, for those that don't know, not only is he a hip hop artist, he's also a licensed and certified instructor for both the NRA and the USCCA, which is the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. And he tours all across the country teaching firearm safety and training. Uh, he was talking about how he has about 4 IFACs, these individual first aid kits. And he takes these to the gun range because that's another point of why people go to the ER, gunshot injuries, which is another holiday emergency also because people get guns for Christmas gifts. Excuse me, Christmas gifts. And sometimes people don't store them properly. They don't have gun locks. They don't put them away. The kids get to them. So you every time I hear a news story about a kid that shot him or herself or somebody else, whether they got hurt, injured, or killed, I blow my stack because I'm like, all they needed was a cheap gun lock that you can get anywhere. There are places that will give you gun locks for free. Most of your local sheriff's departments and police departments will gladly give you a gun lock or two for free. Because again, nobody wants that call.
Yeah.
I don't want that call as a EMS person. The police does not want that call. The most fire departments, they want you cross trained. So those firefighters typically are EMTs at minimum, or they're firefighters and paramedics, like myself. We don't want those calls. So we get them. We got to take that stuff home with us too. We're human. I'm not a robot. My air goes in and out, and round it, and blood goes around and around just like yours does. Doesn't matter if you're not a trained professional. I gotta, when I'm talking to my wife, hey, how was your day? And she's like, oh, I had to, put this database together, and the people didn't want to give me all their information, and they didn't want to do their part. And she would be like, how was your day? And I'm like, I had to resuscitate this kid that cut off his toe while he was cutting grass because he had on some flip flops. Oh, and then I had to do CPR on this guy who, overdosed on some fentanyl and heroin. Oh yeah, and then because we did 48-hour shifts, 2 days on, 4 days off, and I worked for a private EMS service, so I'm getting it left and right. We're not even talking about the COVID stuff or whatever, but I'm just saying like those are things that we dealt with in terms of those type of issues and stuff. So I got a tad bit of ADD. So can you remind me of what the question was?
Oh no, you're good. You were telling us about
My
your
wife is going to
fan
appreciate
moment when
that.
you got to be on the
Oh, okay.
podcast. Yeah.
See how I went into a whole nother thing. So
But
anyway,
no, but you know what? It's related, and I think that people need to hear that because people forget that like these are real people who show up for these calls, who
absolutely,
work in these, medical facilities that are having to respond to, and it's not just you. Like this is your tragic event, but you
absolutely,
multiply that by all the tragic events that really could have been avoided with some
absolutely,
education and people just being a little bit more proactive and being a little bit more aware of what they're doing and what people around them are doing. Because part of we're having this conversation, not just for people to work on getting their houses in order, but also Talk to your people.
Talk
Talk
to
to
your
your people. You
talk to
know,
your people.
everybody's together around the holiday season. That presents an amazing opportunity. If you're at your cousin's house and you hear that smoke alarm beeping, say, "Cuz, hey, what's up with that? Get them some batteries."
So as a kid, I used to get batteries all the time in my stockings because I had toys that were battery operated. So those are great stocking stuff. So going back to Griff, so Griff, one of the things that he was doing was a live chat, and people were chiming in. Okay, what should you put in your IFAC? Because you can buy them and or assemble them yourself.
Okay.
And I was chiming in on what was in my IFAC, and I got four of them too, and they're different for different things or whatever. Because you're not going to have the same one for a gun range as you would like if you were going to a kid's birthday party. Because they're going to
Right.
have
Or
different
in your
stuff in there. Yeah.
car
Or in your car.
as at
Well, I got
home.
like three or four of them in my car, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, exactly. In your house, you'll have a different one. So uh, we were chiming in, me and other people, and towards the end, he said, "Hey, I would love to collaborate with people about doing more of these talks, kind of like the TED talks."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I chimed in, and our partner Dexter Doc Peggins, who does Stop the Bleed, and he's an Army vet and a combat medic, he chimed in. So Professor Griff has had the same cell phone number that he's published for years and years and years and years and years. So he was like, "Hey, here's my number. Call me," and he gives it out for all kind of stuff or whatever. So I text him. He called me back. I was like, "Oh my god," you know. So we talked for about 5 or 6 minutes, and
Oh
like
my
I was
gosh.
cool on my fandom and all that stuff. But I was like, "Hey, I'm a huge fan. I got all your stuff." Because even when he went solo, you know, he put out a bunch of albums too. And I was just talking about that,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to talking about what we were going to be working on. And then I reached out to Doc via IG. I DM'd him, and we talked. And then he talked to Griff, and we did a 2 hour phone call um, last Thursday. And
Okay.
we were just talking about how we were going to form this partnership. And so on the 29th, which was this past Wednesday, we did the first in the series of live streaming, talking
Okay.
about IFACs, first aid, safety, and different things like that. So part of what we were talking about is IFAC kits. So this is my tactical, meaning that this is what I would use in a situation like at the Kroger or Parkland or Columbine or the shooting that happened out in Vegas at the Outdoor Country Western concert, or at the movie theater. Uh, I think that was in Colorado also,
Mm-hmm.
or the Sandy Hook. You know, this is my IFAC for that because it has a tourniquet, two tourniquets. I have a knife in here. I always carry. Ladies, always carry a knife. You know, my knife has a window puncher on it.
Mm. Oh wow. Okay. So
It
that's
has a
like
seatbelt cutter.
okay.
Don't drive through standing water because that's another way people die.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have all kind of knives. Some of them have flints on them so you can start fires and stuff if you're in the woods or camping or what have you. But yeah, it has a belt clip on it. But yeah, I have tourniquets. I have hemostatic gauze, which is it stops the bleed, quick clot. I have chest seals. I have all kind of stuff in here. So if I ran across somebody that got shot, I'm ready.
Yeah.
You know, that's just my IFAC, my tactical one. My big dog daddy, as I call it.
My gosh. That was
I keep
huge.
this. I
So
keep
for
this in
people
my
who are
car.
listening, y'all gonna have to watch the video because
Y'all gonna have
yeah,
to
you
watch the
gotta
video.
see these.
My big dog daddy.
How many pounds is that?
This is probably 15 pounds.
Okay, so you keep it in the car or at home?
I keep I keep this in the car.
Okay.
Now, in this, I have all kind of stuff. Like I could pretty much almost do anything with this. I have smaller first aid kits.
Okay. So if there was some big event, casualty event, you could distribute those to other people so that they could help others.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got like 3 of these field trauma kits, in here. I got all kinds of stuff. So in your first aid kit, pocket mask. I got like if I wish I had a big table and I just had everything laid out. I got trauma shears. These will cut through anything: clothes, dresses, leather, all kind of stuff or whatever. I got different shit. You want to have Sharpies and we talk about this on the video. So on the video, it's Serious Minds, Serious like the Sirius XM,
Mm-hmm.
and Minds with the Z, MINDZ, as in
Okay.
zebra. If you do a Google search or you go on YouTube and search for Serious Minds or just search for Professor Griff.
We'll have a link for it in the bio.
I have a link for it.
Yeah, I'll include a link for it in the bio so that people can also find it in the description box.
So we covered a bunch of stop the bleed, what you should have, and like I said, it's going to be a continuous thing because we didn't even have enough time to cover everything in that 1 hour session or whatever. And they'll be every Wednesday starting at 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
On YouTube, and I think he simulcasted on his IG page also, which is at Professor Grip, all one word. But as far as your first aid kits, some of the basic stuff that you want to have is gauze. You want to have, I would say, have a tourniquet. You want to have gloves, so you want to have PPE. I got all kind of gloves. I try to stay away from the latex gloves because people have latex allergies.
Oh, okay.
So you want to get the nitrile or the vinyl gloves.
Okay.
But anything that's non-latex, and it doesn't matter what color they are because they come in all colors. Okay. You can get gloves anywhere. You want to have Band-Aids. You want to have bandages. I got SAM splints, which are these splints that you can use to help people that have broken bones. Let me tell you something. If you have health insurance, and this is for everybody, if you have health insurance and you pay into your FSA or HSA, but especially the FSA, there is a website, www.fsastore.com, that you can use any FSA card, and they have a whole wide range of first aid kits and medical supplies and IFACs, different kind. You can get first aid kits from $20 to first aid kits like this big orange bag worth of stuff, which is like $500 worth of stuff or whatever. They take all FSA cards. You go to fsastore.com.
Y'all, these are good Christmas gift ideas.
Great Christmas gift ideas.
These are good gift ideas.
You can go to Dollar Tree. Yeah. You can go to Dollar Tree. This is a bag you can get anywhere. I mean, this bag I bought because it's a specific bag and it has specific stuff in it. But you can get a bag like this at a Dollar Tree. Go to and Dollar Tree, they have an aisle for like pharmaceutical stuff or whatever. Yeah. You can get Band-Aids and alcohol wipes and gloves and adhesive tape and just a litany of stuff. Like on this particular kit, it has all the things that come with it: Splendor, forceps, and acetaminophen, and ibuprofen, and Benadryl, and aspirin, and bite sting relief, sterile gauze, antibiotic ointment, just all kind of stuff that you can get. You can get that stuff for cheap. They sell little first aid kits at these places anywhere: Dollar General, Dollar Tree, Walmart, Target. those make great Christmas gifts because nobody thinks about buying something like that. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to spend a ton of money, but it helps. It's just like if you bought somebody a lottery ticket. They might win. But at least that's going to be more practical and usable than
Yeah.
buying them a lottery ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have all kind of stuff in your kit, and on that YouTube page, we'll get more into those things because we just don't have time to cover it here. And
Yeah.
Doc and I are going to be working on some projects where we're doing stop the bleed training. We also have a stop the bleed, like I said, a stop the bleed training December the 12th. That's going to be a paid online virtual 3-hour class that we're putting together now. So just stay tuned for that. But that stuff will be on our. It will be on our information coming up soon.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's excellent. And people, like, you can go to agencies like the Red Cross. They've got checklists for first aid kits for what you might want to have at home, for what you might want to have in your car if you have pets, because you need to make sure you've
Absolutely.
got things that are for your pets. If you have children, you might
Yeah.
want to have particular things in there. So definitely the Red Cross has some really good checklists to help you get
Absolutely.
those kits started. Or you could just, purchase one for that particular need. Or you can just go, if you don't have a lot of money to invest in like that amazing one that Larry has, you can start where you are. A lot of times people
Right.
don't do it because they feel like, well, I don't have $100 to invest in doing this right now. You know what? Something is better than nothing. So get that basic kit that you can get right now and have something in your car, have something in your house. And as you
Absolutely.
can, just add to it. So just definitely just get something going, because unfortunately these events aren't going away. And
No.
the other thing is, you just may drive past something, where you see someone else who's in trouble and they may need need some of those resources. So it's better to have it than to not. And so,
I
mhm.
I will add this, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Um, if you see somebody that's in trouble, it's kind of like the old biblical thing. You don't have to be into religion or what have you. I'm just using this as a
Hmm.
reference. Do unto others as they would have you do. You
Yeah.
would have them do unto yourself or what have you. And so I would hope and pray that if my loved one, family, friend, what have you, was hurt or injured, that somebody would render aid. And rendering aid can be just as simple as calling 911. If you just do that, that is tremendous. That
Yeah.
is, you know what, you get a gold star because some people won't even do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to put hands on. Just call 911. But if you
Yeah.
want to do more, you can do more because a lot of times people are covered as far as I don't want to get sued or whatever. So let me, uh, not put hands on or whatever. So what they'll do is they'll go ahead and just stay back or whatever. But yeah, you definitely want to just do something like get trained and once you get trained, you'll see what ways you can help out
Mm-hmm.
because there's different. You can do a lot of stuff helping that you don't even put hands on people. And like I said in
Mm-hmm.
the live stream that we did last week, we talk about how to even do that without even touching somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and that's why those trainings are so invaluable, because you can do what's in your comfort level. Yeah, and you'll
Absolutely.
get educated about the Good Samaritan laws, and you'll get educated about, what legal protections you have around helping somebody. So that's the other benefit. Go to one of these trainings. A lot of times community colleges may offer them. Just call around and check. A good starting point is always your local health department, because if they don't offer it, they probably know who does. Different community action agencies and everything. Those are resources. There are so many free resources out here that our tax dollars
So many.
fund. Our tax dollars fund this stuff, y'all. Use it.
Reading is fundamental. always has been, always will be. You're a lawyer. You're a trained lawyer. You passed the bar. Can you give us a brief overview, just in a paragraph or two worth of information about the Good Samaritan Law and how that
Well, it
works,
can
just for the
vary.
average Joe?
So yeah,
In
that can
Missouri, let's talk
vary.
about Missouri.
But in general, you're protected if you're
Okay.
rendering aid to someone. So that's the thing. In general, you're protected. And so I know a lot of people are really hesitant because they think, oh, if I do this, I'm not a clinician and I hurt this person, they can come and sue me. In general, you are protected if you're rendering aid to someone. If this person is conscious and it makes you feel better to ask them, like, are you okay with me helping you? Just basic things like we don't have to overcomplicate it, people. Like you just quoted, like the golden rule: do unto others as you want done to yourself, or those that you love. Ask, are you okay with me helping you? Like I saw once, I was out and I was out of town, and I saw a girl that was standing outside of a club and she was upset and crying. And so I went over, and because that's a red flag for me whenever I see a female out
Absolutely.
and she's in distress. And I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, no, not really. And I said, do you want me to call somebody for you? Are you feeling unsafe? And again, that's for you to determine, like, how comfortable and how safe it
Absolutely.
is for you to intervene, because there are some circumstances when it may not be safe for you to physically intervene, where you just may need to observe from a distance and call for help, and that's absolutely fine. Because again, you're getting that person some resources that they need. But people, like, don't not help somebody because you're worried about being sued, because in most instances you're okay. And I say most because there's always a caveat to everything.
Always a caveat.
So I'm
That's our
saying most.
disclaimer.
Yeah, that's
You
that's
know,
that's the
that's our disclaimer.
legal part of me. But it's, if it makes you feel better, if that person is conscious and you want to ask them, are you okay with me? You're bleeding. I'm gonna try to help you. Are you okay with me helping you? And get 911 on the line. Like, you can literally call, if you don't have a Bluetooth, call 911, put them on speaker, set the phone right there. They will walk you
Absolutely.
through what you need to
Absolutely.
do.
Turn the
They will tell
volume all the
you,
way up.
don't do
Put
that,
the- yeah.
or do this. And what they're trying to help you do is, you're not responsible for, like, saving or curing this person, but you're just helping help them hold on until EMS gets there, until the real people, lifesavers, actually get there.
I don't know of any case, active or past, where somebody was hurt, injured, dying, or dead,
Mm-mm.
where a Good Samaritan came in to help out.
No.
And no matter what the outcome was, like, that person got sued or whatever. Most of the time, what we hear about is a situation where somebody called 911 because they were trying to do something else and end up causing somebody to get hurt, end up causing somebody to be dead
Mm-hmm.
or what have you, on some other stuff or whatever.
Yes.
And it's like, where they should have just minded their business or just call 911 and let the
Mm-hmm.
professionals deal with that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know if people have, prime example, there's a case in Minnesota that's going on currently where police and the paramedics are being tried for murder of a young man who somebody in the neighborhood called and said this guy was walking down the street in the evening. It was nighttime. He had a ski mask on. He had a bag in his hand. He looks suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
Police roll up on him. The guy said he had some anxiety issues and stuff. He wasn't bothering anybody. He wasn't doing anything. He was just walking home from the store or what have you. They put hands on him. They subdued him, and it just went downhill from there. They call EMS. EMS comes and they administer ketamine, which is a tranquilizer.
Yeah.
This young man died because they gave him too much, allegedly. Because this is again,
Yeah.
it's an open case. So our disclaimer: this is, and you can Google this
Yeah.
or whatever. So these paramedics, and this is one of the first times that paramedics have actually been charged with murder. I think it's a second
Is
degree.
it murder? Are they going for manslaughter or
I can't remember, but again, the guy died. So
yeah.
murder, manslaughter.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this is one of the first times that not only did the police get charged, the paramedics got charged
But the
or
distinction I
whatever.
want to make there, though, for people in the audience, is those are licensed professionals, and so they're being held to a different standard of care. And I'm not saying whether
Absolutely.
they were negligent or not, but I'm mentioning that so that people in the audience who are just like regular people, like understand that you're not being held to that same standard of
You're
care
not being
because
held to that same standard.
there's not that expectation that you have that sort of training or discernment to be able to know this is like in the example you gave earlier, if someone's unconscious and they're bleeding, do you do CPR first or do you stop the bleed? Well, if you don't know, and some people think, oh, they're not breathing, I need to do CPR first. They don't understand that doing that CPR is going to probably cause them to lose blood faster and bleed out.
Yeah.
So they don't know that, but you're not held to the same standard
No.
as someone who is actually in the life saving industry. So for regular non clinical people, you generally wouldn't have that consideration.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, and in that instance, it's really unfortunate because the other thing with that is for y'all, for everyone who's in that field, like you have to make decisions like real quick. Like you don't know
Yes.
that person's complete medical history. You don't know what else they're taking that might contraindicate your life-saving measures. And you
Yes.
have a lot happening really fast. And that's something I want people to understand as well. When people are yelling or interfering, because again, I've seen it in like real life, but I also saw it when I was working in the ED, when I was at Children's. I worked at several, but so I was with adults as well. And in both places, like you would see family that would come in and they just really want to interfere. And it's like, you back up because
Right.
these people are trying to get as much information about this patient. And sometimes the person can't communicate and tell them, like, this is my history, this is what's going on. There's nobody there to give you that. And you're trying to make all these judgment calls really fast
Absolutely. Yeah.
using all of
Uh,
your years of experience and education. And sometimes there are calls that may have been different had you had, with what is the Monday morning quarterback. In
Monday morning
retrospect, you
quarterback.
look at things and you may say, okay, I would have done this a little bit differently. But in that moment, you're trying to save this person's life and you're trying to triage, you're trying to do all this as fast as possible. And so, folks, when you call 911 and the people show up to help your loved one, let them do their jobs. If you can give them information related to exactly what happened around that incident, yeah, they need that. But if you know things about their allergies, if you know things about what legal or prescribed and unprescribed medications or drugs they may be taking, share that information because it might be relevant, probably is relevant. And that's another reason why we kind of need to have those conversations with our loved ones. Because a lot of times people don't even know, what their family member situations are. Okay, so we have been talking about 911 a lot, but
Mhm.
a lot of people in the audience may not really be sure when they need to call 911 versus when they need to hop in the car and go to the emergency department immediately, or when they should start with their doctor. So, before we wrap up, I would like us to provide some guidance, just some considerations that people can have in mind for making that decision, with the caveat, of course, that this is not medical advice. So if you ever have an emergency where you feel like you need to call 911, call 911. But these are some considerations and things that, are based on Larry's years of professional experience and when it may be a good way for you to kind of decide what way you need to go. So, any guidance on when to call 911 versus when to go to urgent care, emergency department, or call the physician?
Just to add to your disclaimer, this is just from my experience. You always want to call for any medical or trauma issues or both. You definitely want to call your doctor. Let's say it's a medical issue. I guess emergencies in my training, we break them down to stable and unstable. So you still want to make a phone call. So let's say like you're in the kitchen and you just start getting some elbow pain, you're cutting up some veggies or something like that. And you just get this severe elbow pain and like it's just not going away. And like you stretching and moving your arm around and all that stuff or what have you, you know, you can call your doctor about that. Say, hey, I keep getting, and it's been going on for an hour or 2 hours or just throughout the day, kind of in and out. It's just been happening. I would call my doctor about that. Now if it got to a point where like you couldn't move your arm or the pain is like 8, 9, 10 out of 10, something like that, then you may want to call an urgent care. Um, and they'll do an evaluation just like if you call 911.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have an evaluator, probably a nurse, get on the line and they'll talk to you about your symptoms and different things that you've done. What were you doing prior to the pain? And at that point, they're going to either tell you to come in. If they think it's severe enough, they'll say go ahead and call 911. Now, if you go, and the same thing with the doctor, you call your doctor's office. You'll probably get a nurse on the phone. Sometimes the doctor may be in and they'll transfer you to the doctor. But either way, they're going to do an evaluation and assessment on the phone, especially now with technology. You have telemedicine or call a doc or tell a
Mm-hmm.
doc. And so you'll do almost like a Zoom call with
Yeah.
the doctor or the nurse practitioner or whoever, the PA that's in the office. They'll do an assessment. And at that point, they'll either say, come in for an appointment with us, go to an urgent care, or go to an ER. If you don't have your own PCP, primary care physician, same thing. You can call an urgent care. Just Google urgent cares that are near you and do the same thing. If it's something really critical, like somebody stopped breathing, somebody's having chest pain, I call it the big five. So chest pain, shortness of breath, altered mental status, weakness on one side or the other,
Mm-hmm.
unconsciousness, or unresponsive. Now, unconscious and unresponsive are used synonymously, very erroneously. Those are two totally separate things.
Mm-hmm.
Unconscious is you got two people fighting, one cold costs the other. They're down, they're still breathing, they're just out. Unresponsive, however, no pulse, no respiration. That person is clinically dead. You need to start doing CPR. So those are the two differences. And like I tell people, we're not talking apples and hammers, we're talking apples and oranges.
Yeah.
So, or apples and oranges, we're talking apples and hammers. So that's the difference between unconscious and unresponsive. So that person is clinically dead. So if you're not having one of those 5 or 6 things going on with you, then you can
So the
probably
five,
go
wait, let
to
me make sure we recap those. So the five are
yeah,
the breathing,
chest pain.
chest pain,
Yep. Yeah.
pain on one side of the body,
Pain or weakness.
pain or weakness on one side of the body.
Because
Um,
you start thinking about stroke symptoms.
okay.
Uh, so chest pain, shortness of breath, altered mental status, because that could be a sign of hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, or
Mm-hmm.
stroke also,
Mm-hmm.
or some intoxicant or what have you. So chest pain, shortness of breath, altered mental status, weakness on one side of the body or the
Mm-hmm.
other, and then your unconscious/unresponsive
Okay.
situation. Those things, that's an ER call automatically. Like,
911
definitely.
call or
Yes, that's a 911
okay.
call to the ER, not to the doctor, not to the urgent care.
Yeah, that's
That's directly.
911.
That's 911. Because if you go to an urgent care with one of those issues, typically they're going to ship you over to an ER.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's the other thing. If you drove there and if you go to an urgent care for anything, if they determine you need a higher level of care, they're going to say you need to go to an ER and they'll call it ambulance.
Yeah. So that was the biggie for people to know the top 5 situations in which you need to call. Just start with calling 911. In terms of bleeding, is if it's bleeding that you can't get under control, or at what point with someone bleeding, because you mentioned a lot of those emergencies that typically happen at the house during the holidays and everything. So with the falls and with the bleeding and some things, should people automatically call 911 for those things? Or is that something that maybe, and you can tell me if you don't feel comfortable answering that,
Sure.
or is that something that people can try to manage, that like stop the bleeding at home and then pop the person in the car and go to urgent care or something? Or like for broken bones, that something that people need to call 911 for? Because I know a lot of people use 911 because they don't want to have to go to the waiting room. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, to make it clear that that's not true, that you can call 911 and come by ambulance and you still, that won't bypass the waiting room automatically. And that may actually mean that you're going to have to wait much longer than you would have otherwise if you just gone to urgent care. So that's what I'm getting at with these questions.
Sure. So as far as broken bones, major bleeds, you can throw major bleeds in there too, as far as the big number, because that's a totally unstable situation.
Mm-hmm.
Any major bleed or broken bone, whether it's especially a compound fracture where you have one or more bones broken.
Which people won't know that. So for people at home, how would they distinguish when it's a broken bone that they need to call 911 for versus going in the car?
I would say you can go to the ER by any means, whether you have a family member or a friend take you or call 911. The thing about going to the ER, especially, let's say if you go by car for whatever, if you go to the ER by car, you're going to be triaged based on your mechanism of injury or the nature of illness. So trauma or medical. So trauma is the mechanism of injury, and the medical issue like a heart attack, stroke, stuff like that, that's your nature of illness. So depending on what the MOI or the NOI is, they're going to triage you based on that, as well as the other MOIs and NOIs that are in the ER. So if you go to Barnes, SLU, St. Mary's, any of the Mercies, the St. Louis Hospital, which was formerly St. Alexis, if you go to any of those facilities, and they're all based on levels, so your Barnes, your SLUs, your Mercies are going to be level 1 hospitals. If you go in there and the waiting room's packed, they're going to take them based on the level of importance. So any level 1 trauma, any level 1 medical is going to get first. Everybody's going to get bumped down from that point on. Just going to the ER by ambulance does not guarantee that you're going to get a room. And I'll say it again, just going by ambulance does not mean that you're going to get a room. So if you think, because we'll have people calling us all the time, and I'm talking about, like, I've had chest pains where I called it in, because when you call 911 and somebody like me shows up and we put you on the stretcher, get you in the truck, start doing stuff and going en route, I got to make a call to the ER that we're going to and say, hey, this is made agreement such and such. We have such and such going on. You know, here's what I've done. Here's what I saw. What do you have anything you want to add to it? And then from that point, they'll tell us, come quicker, or, we'll see you when you get here. And from that point, I've had a chest pain call, clearly chest pain, clearly they were having a STEMI or a heart attack, and they wanted me to go to triage. And I'm like, I got a STEMI, which is the medical term for a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
I had to call and talk to the attending physician because, the charge nurse runs the ER,
Mm-hmm.
but the physicians are the doctors who run the ER, altogether. And so from that point, it's like, I had to talk to the doctor, the head doctor, and say, hey, I got a STEMI. They wanted me to go to triage or whatever. So they pulled me to the side. They looked at my EKG and they're like, oh, yeah, okay, here we go. Let's get them into a room or something like that. So you got to be a patient advocate and stuff. But for just the lay person, again, because you go by ambulance or even come by car with a major injury, you might be in line behind some other people with even more severe injuries. Whatever. So that's just the game that you play.
Yeah.
And now COVID and these Delta variants, it's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and I don't want to go too deep, and I know we are getting close to our time, but one thing to mention just for people to keep in mind, because for folks who've never worked in a clinical environment, they really don't know. They come in and they think, I came to the emergency department, I shouldn't have to wait, but right now it's RSV season, which is really prevalent. And what does that remind me what that stands for again? It's respiratory or what is it?
It's just a respiratory virus. Like I said, you don't want to get too technical, but it's just a respiratory infection. It's a virus.
Okay. Typically seen in children, correct?
Children.
So it's RSV season, flu season.
Another one is allergic rhinitis. So you have a bunch of runny nose and stuff like that or whatever. It's just a real bad cold virus, more of a viral type of an issue. So and the flu is still going on. This is, so a lot of people think, everything is COVID now. No matter what, a bum arm, it's COVID, because it's hurting. Everything is COVID now. So it's like, we'll start with COVID and then we'll rule everything out from that point.
Yeah. So that's what people are up against when you go to the emergency department. And that's why I wanted to kind of identify what are our top 6 situations in which you need to, that's definitely a 911 call. If you've got uncontrollable bleeding, if you've got change in mental status, if you've got something going on with your chest pains, if you're having issues with breathing, if you're having unresponsive, unconscious, if you've got pain or weakness on one side of the body, those are the 6 situations in which you definitely want to call 911. In other circumstances, those may warrant, calling your physician or just getting in the car and going to urgent care. Because again, with everything that's going on right now, just because you go via ambulance doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will move up the priority line any faster than everybody else who is there. And you have to understand that because we've got a lot of, we've got a really challenge with allocating resources, with staffing and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to go too deep into that, but just to put in perspective as to why that was something important for us to talk about in the scope of this conversation, that just kind of help people understand how to prioritize when you call 911, because we want you to have the right expectations. Just because you call 911 doesn't mean you're going to jump to the top of the priority line. So we have covered like a whole lot related to medical emergencies and first aid kits and all those things to kind of help you all navigate the holidays. But it's so amazing to me that with all this wealth of knowledge that Larry has recently transitioned in his career to doing something a little bit different. So before we wrap up, can you share with the audience what you are doing now and how they can find your company and collaborate with you if they're interested?
Oh yeah. So a couple of things. When COVID hit in 2020, again, I was on the front line fighting, just like a lot of other first responders are doing and still doing, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided at that point, because my wife has some pre-existing conditions that directly would affect her if she were to get COVID. One of the things I had her do with my stepdaughter, her youngest daughter, was to come to Charlotte because that's where she was raised. She was born in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Shelter in place, and this was back in March of last year. And so they packed a week worth of clothes, came to Charlotte, and the next week they did this, shutdown. And we were like, okay, what do we do now? And so I'm fighting COVID, and the fire department I worked at, it hit us pretty well, a bunch of different crews, because you have A, B, and C shifts. And so one of our higher ranking officers got COVID real bad, was on a vent for a few days, was in ICU for, almost a week, and then didn't come back to work for a couple of months. And so it wasn't a matter if we were going to get it, it was when. Mm-hmm. And because those that we worked in, we were getting COVID patients left and right. And so at that point, we had to decide, well, do I decide I want to keep working, doing this, and possibly expose my wife and she could possibly die, or do I make some change or what have you? And so we decided at that point, well, maybe we should just kind of put this on hold. And some things changed in our family that allowed us to move to Charlotte, because we had a 5-year plan that we were going to move to Charlotte once our girls graduated high school. Okay. Anyway, so just move those plans up. So that's where we are now. And my wife, she works for a Fortune 100 company. And so, financially, like, we're good as far as that. And she was like, well, you always talked about going to get your RN. You always talked about doing some other stuff or whatever. Now you have the time to do that. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I started this company, and she's part of it also. So it's, if you go to, or if the listeners, they go to www.penton, pending. So it's my last name. So it's PENTON, pending, PENDING.com. They can look at all the stuff that's on our site that talks about what we do. I got to update it to add some of the podcast stuff that we're doing now and that we're going to be focusing on in the near future. But the company started, we help online and startup companies get started. So if they need to get a website, if they need social media, if they need anything related to creating their own businesses, besides that initial ideal of their business concept. If they need help getting their LLCs, HR, payroll stuff, licensing, taxes information, they come to us and we'll consult with them. And if it's something that we don't do in-house, we will affiliate and point them in the direction to some partners that we have. So that's how the company started. And from that point on, we're just expanding into, like I said, the podcast and different things like that. There's so much more that we're going to be doing in the near future. It's just, this is just a great start right now.
Yeah.
As far as the medical stuff, I'm still wondering, because I always said if I got back into EMS or fire, I wouldn't be on the ambulance, because my plan was never to be on the ambulance for 20 years. So you got to remember, I started in EMS at 37. I'm 50 now. So I was doing IT for 20 years before that. And this is a really physically demanding job.
Yeah.
And so I said if I got back into it, it would be more on the academic side, teaching, because that's what I wanted to do years ago when I got into EMS, eventually. So that's where we are as far as the career. I emailed you like all of my social media platforms.
Yeah, all of the social media info will be in the description box and at she.confidential.com on the episode page.
As well as the live streaming events that we're going to be doing with Professor Griff and some projects that we're going to be doing. I'll send you that if I didn't email that to you, so you can post that too. But anybody reach me on IG is at LP, my initials, LP Firemedic, all one word. If you want to go on to anything else, like I said, all that stuff will be linked into the description once you post it.
Excellent. I'm so excited for you. It's so cool. So many people were able to kind of pivot and really tap into how their talents were in alignment with their goals and what they really wanted in life during last year. COVID has been a really traumatic time for a lot of people, but it's also allowed us to do a lot of soul searching and kind of get closer to what our life purposes are. So I'm so happy that you and your wife have been able to find yours. So thank you so much. This was such an important conversation. We covered a lot. I will, for the audience, y'all make sure you check the description box and go to the episode page on she.confidential.com, because Larry mentioned a lot of different resources and organizations and everything. And I'll have the links for all of those resources and organizations on the website, as well as in the description box for the podcast app that you're listening on, or on the YouTube channel. And on the website, I'll have all of Larry's contact information as well. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Y'all, these are good conversation starters for you to have with your people during the holiday gatherings. Talk to them about just making sure that they understand some things that they need to do to kind of be safer during the holiday season and beyond. We gave you great ideas for stocking stuffers and gifts, getting those smoke detectors, batteries, and emergency kits, and all those things. So lots of great information for you to implement within your household, but more importantly, to share that with the people that you love. So thank you so much, Larry. Congrats on your new business, and congrats on your new podcast collaboration. That's just dope. So dope. So
can I just add one other thing?
Yes.
Since we're talking about 911 calls, and I really don't get into like the political stuff or anything like that. I know in society, in our society, we're dealing with a lot of things, especially with Black and brown people, when it comes to calling 911, and it ends up going left because somebody was having a mental health crisis and they called 911 and people showed up and the person ended up dead at the hands of those who responded to the call. I would just say, if you have, and this is just me giving my 2 cents here, if you have a family member or a friend or somebody that's having a mental health crisis, or even if you see like a complete stranger, make sure when you're making that call that you constantly reinforce that, especially if it's somebody that you know, that this person, you're calling about a mental health crisis. If it's, and be as descriptive about the person as you can. If they have a weapon, let the police know that they have a weapon. Let them know what kind of weapon they have. If they don't have a weapon, let them know that they don't have a weapon. As far as you can see, they're not brandishing it, they're not holding it out. If they have, and tell them, I don't know if this is real or not. It could be a toy, like what happened with Tamir Rice. You don't know what they're holding on to or whatever, because some of these weapons, can be toys or what have you. So you just have to be really mindful when you call 911. Be as descriptive. If you firmly believe it's a mental health crisis, ask for the police and an ambulance. Because they would dispatch them both. And typically the cops will get there for the ambulance, but tell them, I need an ambulance and the police to come. Here's the issue that's going on. Please send the ambulance and the police. So it's just not the police that are dealing with this issue, because there are people that have had issues where it was only an EMS issue, because once the police determine it's an EMS issue, they're pretty much just making sure. And the other thing is, when 911 is called and an ambulance is called, we're not going to go on scene until the police say it's safe. We call it
Mm.
state. So we'll be 2 blocks that way and 2 blocks that way, waiting for them to clear the scene that it's safe.
Okay.
And we don't care if you bleed out like Mount Vesuvius or something like that. Like, we're not going to come on the scene. That's not like the old days. We would just show up, because those cops, they're trained in CPR and first aid too. They have tourniquets and first aid kits, so they can stop a major bleed. But if it's still not safe, we're not going to show up until they say it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's important for people to be aware of. And I think a lot of times people have a lot of apprehension about calling 911 because they're like, I don't want to get involved, or I don't want to be, responsible for something bad happening. And I think the key takeaway from what you just said is it's just be as descriptive as possible. Nobody is going to hold you responsible if there's something more to what you observe, because you don't know everything, particularly if it's a stranger. And even if it's a family member, you may not know that this person just, popped something or smoked something that they thought was just marijuana, but it was laced with something. Nobody's expecting you to know everything. So when you call 911, just like Larry suggested, just try to be as descriptive as you possibly can. And I think it's excellent advice if it's anything that you believe is mental health related, to insist on them sending an ambulance in addition to law enforcement, because, and it's not a bash of law enforcement, but quite frequently they're not trained in how to manage those type of situations. And so what we're trying to get at is, let's get the people there who are trained to best manage those, to keep everybody safe. So when you call 911, just be as descriptive as you possibly can. And if it's something related to mental health, just let the dispatcher know that, so that they can, and ask them to send ambulance along with law enforcement. So thank you. That's an important reminder.
Yeah, one buzzword they can say is, they can use the acronym CIT, send a crisis intervention trained police, send a CIT officer also, because those are law enforcement that are trained in mental health issues, that can de-escalate a lot of times, that will work with the EMS crew that will be on scene. Mm-hmm. And so you definitely, if just tell them, hey, I need an ambulance, I need police with a CIT officer.
Yeah.
They know what that is.
And when you talk to the dispatcher, because again, thinking about the layperson, they're not going to necessarily know that or even remember that. So when you call the dispatcher and you tell them that this is a mental health, I suspect that this is a mental health related issue, does the dispatcher automatically know that they need to probably request that the law enforcement person should be the crisis intervention person?
That's being embedded in more and more trainings regionally. I just tell people, just keep it simple. Like I said, just repeat, I believe this is a mental health emergency. Mm-hmm. I need the police to come just for safety, but it's more about getting EMS involved. And they can ask for a mental health person, or they can ask for officers that are trained, and ask them, right, or you send somebody from the police that are trained in mental health, whatever. Mm-hmm. So you ask these questions while you're on the phone with the dispatcher. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And just in closing, with the drugs that are being used, marijuana and all this stuff, I always tell people, you don't know unless you were there when they made the drug, not when they bagged it or packed it, because you got these celebrities that are ODing and all this stuff, thinking that, I just had some weed, or I just had some coke, mm-hmm, or whatever. Everything is being laced with some opioid of some kind. So unless you were there and you did the chemical makeup and know what the chemical makeup is and all the ingredients, people don't want to get vaccinated, but they'll go ahead and smoke this substance that they don't know who put what in or whatever. So, which is a whole nother conversation. But mm-hmm, I'm just saying, if you don't know what they put in that, you're going to run into some problems or whatever. That sometimes Narcan doesn't work on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And Narcan is typically used for people that we suspect of having a heroin overdose, correct?
Any opioid overdose.
Oh, any? Okay.
Only opioids. It doesn't work on cocaine, doesn't work
Okay.
on any upper drug, no amphetamine type drug or whatever.
Okay.
It works on opioids.
Okay.
No weed or none of that stuff.
Okay.
Laced with fentanyl or whatever.
Yeah, which seems to be the big thing.
Big thing, yeah.
Just drink water. We're going to end with that. Just drink water, everybody. Happy holidays. So thank you, Larry. Thank you. And thank you to the audience. I'm Charlene Ketchum. I've been chatting with Larry Penton. Be sure to check the description box for all the info on how you can follow and find him. This is She Confidential. Thank you so much.
Peace and blessings.